Hello and welcome to the webinar Substantiating Active and Sports Claims for Cosmetic Products. So this webinar is being recorded and I'll be sending the recording to everyone who has registered to the event. So that will be coming in the form of a link at the end of the event. And there'll also be a Q&A at the end as well. So feel free to make a note of any questions as we go through the presentation, because there will be an option for me to answer those for you towards the end. So thank you very much for joining today. So today I'm going to be looking at active and sports claims. So these claims have been around for years. If you think of deodorants and antiperspirants, we've always sort of gone down the active and sports route with that, as well as everyday wear. But over the last few years, there's also been a real increase in targeting cosmetics, specifically for people that have very active lifestyles or very sporty. So more down the kind of colour cosmetic route and skincare route, which we didn't necessarily see before. So I really want to bring it up as a kind of example of the claims you can be making about those kinds of products and how you can go about substantiating them whilst making sure you're still abiding by advertising regulations. So the agenda for today, we're going to be looking at a summary of the active cosmetics market, a bit of an overview of global cosmetic regulations. As I said, this is all going to be about cosmetics, this webinar. Some global regulations for advertising. We'll be looking at consumer research as our method for substantiating those claims. Some successful sport and active marketing claims, some examples of non-compliant claims as well. And I'll be sharing a case study to give you an idea of how you can choose the appropriate study design and methodology to be able to make those claims. So a little introduction for myself. So I am the Consumer Studies Regulatory Specialist for AITIN Global Research. So what my job is to be really aware of what regulations are in place that may affect our clients and that affect advertising law and anything to do with claim substantiation, to make sure that we'll be able to provide the best service possible, but also making sure that I'm doing these kinds of things as well. So educating everyone who wants to attend on what kind of regulations are out there based on my experiences and what I've had to research and the kind of studies we've done, basically. So very often my job will be to look at a client's claims and make sure that we've got the right evidence in place so they can make those claims. Abiding by all those regulations out there. So I've been doing this for about 8 years now. I've been working for AITIN Global Research, started off very much down the study management route, so working with clients on a one-to-one basis, getting to know their studies and getting to know their processes. Then went down the training route, so training clients as well as our staff, and now I've really focused on the regulatory aspect because it's always a bit of a grey area for people. So making sure that I know everything that I need to know to give you the best advice possible. So I just want to start off with an overview of the active beauty market. So there's a bit of research out there about how it's all kind of gaining kind of a lot of speed. So there's a really good example here where Mintel did a market research back in 2017, seeing that it's kind of having fast growing influence. Then they did a sort of another follow-up in 2019 as well to say that it is absolutely growing. So it's definitely something to look at if you are interested. There's quite a lot of ranges out there now that brands have brought out that are specifically for active people and for active beauty. And again, it's also those sort of old school claims that we look at in terms of antiperspirants and stuff like that as well. So there's definitely a lot to be looking at. That people that want to, be able to wear cosmetics when they work out and, know that it's long wearing, that sort of thing. But also to protect their skin. It kind of goes into the wellness industry a bit. So a lot of people being more cautious about, what they're doing to their body, being healthy, and so making sure their cosmetics reflect that as well. I want to talk about the impact of COVID-19. I feel like we have to at the moment. It's not something that we can avoid. It's definitely something that's happening. Definitely things are changing, and it couldn't be better timing for this presentation because last night in the UK, I know this is UK specific, but our government has announced that gyms can start to open back up on the 25th of this month. So again, it's a really good time for this presentation and to be thinking about that active beauty market, because the chances are that a lot of people have become quite fit during lockdown. I know there's been a range. Some people haven't bothered. Some people have got really into fitness. And that's what I brought up here as kind of some examples of, there's been a huge surge of home fitness equipment and online classes and things like that. And I think now that gyms are going to open up, it will see people kind of carry on that fitness regime. But where people don't really mind what they look like when they're at home, I think people will be really interested in making sure that they're, wearing cosmetics that will complement their active and sporty lifestyles. So I think it's going to be a real growth for the active kind of claims that we need out there. As people kind of move on back into the public and working out in the public. So I want to start off by talking about advertising self-regulation. So as I mentioned, I want to talk about active and sports claims, but how do they fit into the legislative framework of advertising as a whole? So advertising self-regulation is how the advertising industry regulates ads. So every country, or a lot of countries, have self-regulatory organizations which regulate adverts in their own country. Basically, we're making sure that adverts are all legal, decent, honest, and truthful. And a big part of that is having all evidence to substantiate your claims, which is why we're focusing on that. There are three parts of the industry who have to fit into ad self-regulation, and that's the advertisers who pay for the advertising agencies responsible for its form and content, and the media that carry it. So if you're kind of involved in any part of that in the industry, it's really important that you're aware of who is regulating adverts in your country and the laws that are in place as well, to make sure that you're following their code of conduct and that you won't get into any trouble with your adverts, basically. They tend to work on a complaints basis. So most advertising self-regulatory organizations will respond to complaints. They're not necessarily, you don't have to get your adverts registered with them before they go on the market, and not necessarily having a clearance before they go on the market. It's when your products are on the market, if a consumer or a competitor complains about your product, they'll complain to that advertising organization. And then they'll investigate all of your evidence about your products, about the claims you're making, to make sure that your evidence is significant enough to substantiate those claims. If they fail to meet the standards, they must be corrected or they could be removed. I listened to a really interesting podcast the other day, and I thought this was important to bring up, where someone said that, they will get their claims, to make sure their claims abide by the code of conduct of the advertising authorities, but if they don't, it's their risk to go ahead with it anyway, because the advertising authorities won't do anything about it. That's not true. They will investigate your advert, and if it's not right, you will have to remove it, and trading standards will be involved there. So it's not kind of like a warning, like, oh, you should really change your advert. You can't have that advert out there if it goes against their code of conduct. So it's, in case I've not heard that kind of misunderstanding before, so if in case anyone is out there with that misunderstanding, I really wanted to bring that up, because it's very much not a case of you can take their advice, they can't. Your adverts will be removed. If they're not, you could be in trouble with trading standards. They'll get involved as well. So it's really, really important to make sure you're very familiar with the code of conduct, because it's not a great backlash to have in terms of removing your advert. We know how expensive advertising is, how much money will go into putting your adverts out there, how much money will go into printing your claims on your packaging, and to have all of your products removed from shelves is a very expensive, not very nice process to go through just because your claims were uncompliant. So yes, it's important to make a note of that. Sorry, there's something important I wanted to say there, and I'll come back to it. But anyway, so just to point you in the direction of where to look for advertising SROs, there's the ICC, the International Chamber of Commerce. They've got a regulatory framework which these authorities can adopt. So it's a really good starting point if you're not really sure about what the code of conducts are like. If you don't have a particular country you're looking at, you can get an idea of what that framework is. And there's 42 countries worldwide have adopted that framework, and another up to 50 countries that are recognizing the framework and taking parts of it. So it's a really good place to start to see what those countries are, and if you are sort of directing your advertising to those countries, you'll know they've got that framework adopted. There's also the International Council of Advertising Self-Regulation, or ICAS. So they were set up by the European Advertising Standards Alliance. They've got over 20 members, but they are worldwide. So even though they were set up by the EASA, they're actually a global council. And it's basically a place where all of these advertising authorities can come together, have shared views, have shared code of conduct. And if there's any updates to a code of conduct, they all can adopt those. So, you know, for example, again, with COVID-19, they've put out sort of information about what advertising authorities should be looking out for, and they're all following that. So again, if you have a general idea of what countries you want to advertise in, or even a kind of an idea, you can have a look on their website, check that the country you're advertising in is a member, and then, you know, all the news that they're putting out is going to be applicable to those countries. And most of the main kind of markets, when you're looking at cosmetics, are part of ICAS, so it's a really good place to have a look at. I wanted to bring up some countries in particular as well. So like I said, they can, you know, they're members of ICAS. So what do they look like when we're looking at those specific countries? So in the UK, you've got the Advertising Standards Authority. In India, there's the Advertising Standards Council of India. Australia's got Ad Standards. Brazil's got the National Advertising Self-Regulatory Council. And all four of those are all part of ICAS. So again, they're really, that's why I kind of brought them up, because you know that they're following those code of conduct on the ICAS Council. The USA is slightly different. They've got the Federal Trade Commission. The Federal Trade Commission are a federal organization. So they're not an advertising self-regulatory organization. America has the Better Business Bureau national programs, which release that, but they don't police the ads. It's the FTC who do. So they'll be receiving the complaints about the adverts, and they'll be the ones enforcing any kind of complaints there as well. Really important one to be note of, because they're federal, they're much harsher penalties if your adverts fall outside of their code of conduct. So the USA is quite different to a lot of countries in terms of their claims. When you're putting claims on your adverts in the USA, you don't necessarily have to register them anywhere. You can kind of just put them out there. But like I said, there's a bigger risk in terms of what the penalties can be there. So I say, you know, to compare it, in the EU, obviously you have a responsible person. Your responsible person reviews your claims. That's not really the same process in the USA, but it's still really important to be aware of, because the penalties still exist. Examples of advertising laws as well. So even if a country doesn't have an advertising self-regulatory organization or an advertising authority who's regulating the adverts, there are always laws to do with advertising in every country. I've not come across a country that doesn't have advertising laws, because obviously they need to make sure that not only are the adverts legal and honest, they want to make sure they're not offensive. So that's definitely kind of ingrained in every law in every country. So obviously, if you go against advertising laws, you're not just breaking a code of conduct, you're breaking the law. So it's really, really important to be aware of. And I've just put up a few countries to give you an idea of what that looks like. So in the UAE, you've got the National Media Council. Now in the UAE, you've got the Advertising Business Group, who are the advertising authority there. But the National Media Council are the ones that enforce the law. So they work with the ABG. They've got really good documents on their website. So if you're thinking of advertising there, they've got really good guides to advertising, which outlines everything, you know, what kind of evidence you need, what the penalties are. The penalties are harsh in the UAE, I have to say. I think it's 2 weeks that you have. If you have a complaint about your product, you've got 2 weeks to show the evidence. So if you don't have the evidence, you're in a bit of trouble, because you need to show that very, very quickly. Otherwise, there are fines in place there. Which are quite harsh as well. So I brought up a law, you know, an example of one of the laws that they are policing, but there are many, many laws for advertising there. So do get familiar if that's where you're looking to target your adverts. In the USA, you've got the FDA, who create laws to do with things like cosmetics and any kind of FMCG that's on the market. So important to be aware of the laws that they've got there as well. And in China, they've got the advertising law of the People's Republic of China, and that was restated in 2015 to strengthen the consumer protection and to impose tougher rules on advertisers. So again, super important to be aware of. So that kind of summarizes everything, to give you a kind of an outlook of what the authorities are, what the laws are. Again, I've not been very specific. I know that you might be advertising globally, or you might be somewhere in the globe that I haven't mentioned necessarily, but it just gives you an overall picture of where you need to be looking. It's so hard when you're developing a new product. There's so much that goes into it. You know, how do we make it sell? What do you make it look like? What's the formulation? It's really important to kind of go back to that level and go, okay, well, what are we actually allowed to say, and what evidence do we need to make sure that we can say it, to make sure they're satisfying these laws and these authorities in these countries. Again, I want to talk about COVID-19. Again, it's really important. So ICAS, the EASA, the FDA, FTC, and CONARED have all been actively working together to make sure people are not offending their code of conduct when it comes to advertising during the crisis of COVID-19. This is because I'm sure you've all seen a lot of it. I've seen a lot of it. There was kind of this grey area where people just started selling things like hand sanitizer and face masks right at the beginning of the crisis, and making really bold claims about what it could do with COVID-19 that were just not true, and that completely offended all of the code of conduct. Just because it's a crisis doesn't mean the code of conduct stops being in place. It's still there. But also people, you know, might have been, you know, like I said, developing products, getting really excited about it, getting excited about the marketing, and just forgetting that these code of conducts are really important to abide by. And there's certain sort of, you know, well, there's certain codes in there that they might kind of forget about. So not everyone was doing it, you know, on purpose necessarily, but it's just really, especially when you're pushing out something very quickly, it's really important to keep a note of what the code of conduct is. So this was kind of their main points that they brought up. And the main thing that I really took from it is not kind of abusing people's fear, and not taking advantage of that, basically, to make sure that you can sell more products, because it's just not fair. It's going against everything, and it's not fair on the industry as well. Basically, it's a really important thing to note when you're looking at advertising authorities. It's not just about not being fair to the consumer, it's being fair to your competitors, because if you start making bold claims which aren't true, and you sell more products than your competitors because they are following the code of conduct, that's not fair. So that was just some information there that was kind of put together by all of those advertising groups. So being specific when it comes to active and sports claims, the first thing I wanted to bring up is being really aware of what the product categories are. So when it comes to making claims about any product, the first thing to be aware of is what your product category is, because there are certain things that we can say about cosmetics, and there are certain things that we can't say, because then it becomes a medicinal claim, and if it's not a medicine, you can't be saying those things. So the reason I say that particularly for active and sports claims is because, you know, you get things like muscle rubs and things like that, which could, you know, borderline your product. Well, you could be a borderline as well, so there's another layer. So obviously with medicines and cosmetics, and you've got borderline products. I'm not going to talk about borderline products today, because I really want to talk about cosmetics, but just to give you that distinct kind of be distinct. So is it a medicine, is it a cosmetic? We're going to be looking at cosmetics today. This also comes into play when you're looking at things like, as I mentioned earlier on in my presentation, antiperspirants, because that, depending on what country you're in, can be a different product category as well. So there's lots to think about. So be really aware of where you're selling your product, and look at what the product categories are. I've just brought up the definitions for the EU regulation to make life a bit more simple today, because a lot of countries follow the same kind of category breakdown. But if it's not in the EU, please do look up those definitions as well. So basically, the point of medicines is we're looking to treat, prevent, diagnose a disease, or restore some kind of physiological function. So again, it's anything that could be, you know, to cure muscle ache or cure joint pain. That's all going to be your medicines. Whereas cosmetics, they're basically any substance which is going to come into contact of external parts of the human body to be able to change the appearance, correcting body odors, or protect them. So correcting body odors, like I said, antiperspirants or cosmetics in the EU, they fit under there, but obviously other countries might not. So be super aware. So now on to about consumer research. So as I mentioned, we've talked about our advertising laws, we talked about knowing what product we are and what claims we can make. Now, how do we substantiate those claims? So consumer research is what 18 Global Research conduct, which is why I'm talking about it today. But it really is a very successful way of substantiating your claims in a very cost-effective and time-efficient manner. So, you know, laboratory tests, clinical tests, scientific tests, they all have their place. They're really important for certain claims, but you don't always need to use them depending on what your claims are and depending on the body of evidence that you already have on your product. However, on the other hand of it, you can have clinical testing or instrumental studies, but you may also need consumer research to substantiate those claims further. And there are certain claims that you can't prove by science. They are subjective, so that they're things that only a consumer can sort of say they have that opinion on. So consumer studies are in-use tests. They're based on the consumer's perception of the product. So it's not scientific, it's not a measurement. It is saying, I as a consumer perceive this effect. So it could be, if you're looking at, say, an anti-aging claim. Actually, no, let's keep my antiperspirant example. If you're using an antiperspirant claim, you might have an instrumental study which says something like 48 hours wear or something like that. Whereas a consumer might say, I felt dry all day, or I felt fresh all day. Those kinds of claims that, you know, science isn't saying because it's how the consumer feels about it. It's all very well and good to say that it lasts 48 hours, but if a consumer doesn't feel very comfortable wearing it for 48 hours, there's not much point in that claim. So we can really back it up with their perception. Usually we're testing products in home. So they're sending the products to the participants to test in their own home, follow the usage directions as they're provided for them, and they answer an online questionnaire. This reflects the actual conditions in use. So again, it's very well and good having a clinical study and having someone apply this antiperspirant, but what happens when a consumer just reads the instructions like it would be on their packet? Do they get the same results? So it's really important to be able to reflect that. So when it basically means you're kind of protecting yourself against those complaints to those advertising authorities, because people are much less likely to complain if you've got a lot of evidence behind yourself and you know, well, we sent this to 100 people, they all really liked it, they all, you know, followed the usage directions. So the chances are when you scale that up, you are going to get still really positive results with your consumers. Also really important, there's part of the Cosmetics Directive about assessing undesirable events in actual use. So in-home studies are really important for that, because you're, instead of it being a patch test where someone's applying the product, we're monitoring it, we're actually sending it for people to use in their own home. And again, based on those usage instructions, if your usage instructions were off and maybe it was too high a dosage or something like that, you can assess that and correct that before it all goes onto the market. So they'll be assessing the efficacy of maybe one product or comparing products. So you might want to sort of compare against one of your competitors. Certainly, maybe with an antiperspirant claim, you really want to make sure that there's a certain ingredient you're using that actually is proving the effect. So you've got one formulation against another, maybe different fragrances. You want to get some opinions about that. There's a lot that you can look at when it comes to comparison studies, but you might just want to get the claim substantiation for the product on its own. As I mentioned, for some claims you might need additional evidence, so certainly those antiperspirant claims, we couldn't just use that with the consumer study because you wouldn't be able to measure the amount of time accurately. It would be kind of a subjective measurement. So we can always advise with that as well. So if you're not sure, always feel free to get in touch with your list of claims, and I'll be very honest with you and say if it would be substantiated with just a consumer study or whether we'd need to use one of our partners as well for an instrumental test. So why conduct it other than substantiating your advertising claims? It helps you test your product efficacy. So like I said, it might be a comparison study, or maybe you just you've started formulating a new product. Maybe it's a new mascara, which is supposed to be really good for humid conditions, so things like in the gym and stuff like that, and you want to kind of make sure it's not smudging. You might not be at the stage where you want to substantiate the claims, but say, you know, you just want to test that formula and go, actually, when we put it into the real world and when people use it in the gym, is it smudging? Is it flaking? Let's get that feedback now. Again, it ensures that your product is regulatory and legally compliant in your chosen markets. So we're looking at those advertising code of conducts. We're choosing it to test it in the products that you want to. We're choosing to test the products in the countries that you're looking to sell your products, because you don't want to do a UK study necessarily if you are going to sell this somewhere really, really humid, because you've got that battle with your kind of claim as well. Again, that mascara claim, it's one thing saying it works in a gym, but it could be very different in a gym in a different part of the world where they've already got a humid climate anyway. Actually, that will be our case study today, so that would be really interesting for you. A demographic, so find out what market your product suits. So not necessarily just about countries, but I want to target my product at 18 to 30 year olds. Do they like the product? I want to test it on people that use our brand. Do they like the product? It really helps you target your key demographic and make sure that your product's performing as you want them to with the people that are actually going to purchase it. But also you're looking at the geographical sort of side there as well. So again, not just looking at the code of conduct and not just looking at satisfying the legislation in those other countries. Find out if it's accepted there. You might have 5 different key markets around the world. You send your product to all of them, but find that actually, okay, people in India and people in Australia absolutely love this product, but people in the USA didn't like it. So what can we do to change our product or change our marketing, possibly our claims, that will really satisfy our US market? So really important to have a good think about how you can really utilize consumer research, not just to satisfy your claims, but also to really investigate your product and you're going to get the best out of your marketing. I've chosen a couple of examples here of what kind of claims you can substantiate with consumer research. So in terms of, we're looking at kind of sport and active claims. You could say 88% of people agree that their muscles felt more rested. You could say 9 out of 10 people would recommend this product as a gym bag essential, or 96% of people agree that this product is sweat proof. So kind of ideas there to kind of inspire you and think about what sort of marketing claims you'd want. Again, you couldn't get the claim, for example, a must-have for a gym bag through science. It has to be done through consumer research. And you really want to think about those marketing claims. Those are the things that are really going to stand out, make your product stand out from a crowd. I would buy this product, I recommend this product, all those kinds of things. That's what consumer research is really, really good for. So to go back to the legal compliance side of claims as well, I wanted to bring up the 6 common criteria for cosmetic claims that's been stated by the EU Cosmetics Products Regulation. Again, if you're not part of the EU, don't worry, or if you're not selling in the EU, it doesn't matter, because these are really good common criteria for actually any country you're looking at. It's a really good reference point to kind of, if you're looking at a claim, look at all these 6 common criteria and think, am I satisfying all of those? Because it will apply worldwide. So legal compliance, this is where you cannot say, for example, this product complies with EU regulation, because it has to. So it doesn't, you can't state it on your product. If you did that, it would make it look like other products don't comply with it, that don't necessarily have that claim on them. And you have to, every product must comply with regulation. You must be truthful, so you can't say that your product, you can't say that your product contains, say, aloe vera for refreshing aloe vera or something like that if it doesn't contain aloe vera. So that's quite a simple one. You must be truthful about, if you say your product's got something in it, it absolutely must. And it must have a high enough level of it as well. So again, you couldn't just have the tiniest amount of aloe vera and make it a big claim on your product, because if it's not, noticeable in the INCI list, there's no way of saying that. You must have evidential support, so it doesn't matter what claim you're making, you must always have evidential support, depending on the level of evidence, tends to depend on the claim that you're making. So again, consumer research is an excellent one to have for every claim, because if you don't want those scientific measurements, you can use that consumer research. You must be honest, so you can't, what was I going to say here? I had a really good example. Oh yes, you can't say that if you tested, say, a product and 98% of 50 people said, yeah, this product is sweat proof, you couldn't then go, okay, well, we've had 98% of 50 people, so let's say 98% of 200 people, because it sounds way better, and we'd probably get that anyway if we tested on that amount of tested on that amount of participants. You have to be honest. You have to say exactly the data that reflects what was actually conducted. Fairness, so this example, if you were looking at an antiperspirant deodorant, you couldn't compare it against a deodorant that didn't have an antiperspirant and say, you know, it makes you feel fresher for longer, because it's not fair. It's not a true statement. It wasn't compared against something that was accurately similar. So like I said, you might want to do that kind of comparison for your own product development, but when it comes to making those claims, they must be fair in terms of what was actually tested. And your consumers must be able to make an informed decision about the product. So once you've got the claims there and you're really happy about them, word them in a way which is very, very clear for your consumers. This is where, you know, people, especially in the EU, they don't like the word cosmeceutical and things like that, because it's not very clear whether it's a pharmaceutical product or a cosmetic product. If it's a cosmetic product, it shouldn't need to kind of that scientific jargon on there, which doesn't really make much sense to the consumer. There's been a lot of talk about things like this as well, about lots of green claims that have come up recently, because there's no kind of definition of what these kind of, you know, clean beauty claims mean necessarily. So can the consumer make an informed decision about whether they are using the product if they don't really know what it means? So always really think about all of those 6 common criteria. The types of claims as well. So the CTPA have broken down some types of claims, which I think is really, really helpful. If you're to think about what kind of claim you're making and the kind of evidence that you need to substantiate it. So the CTPA, by the way, the Cosmetics, Toiletries and Perfumery Association, they're a UK company, but they work a lot with EU kind of legislation. And they're also just an incredibly helpful tool. If you sell in the UK, or if you're thinking of sell there, or even if you don't, the information they release is great. They release this kind of thing, like I'm saying, like the type of claims and the type of evidence you need to substantiate them. So I would recommend becoming a member, because they have some excellent kind of sort of things on their website there. So the claims they've broken down, you've got sensory claims and product aesthetic claims. That's all to do about the feel of the product. I like the texture, I like the pump it comes in, everything to do about the product and the packaging itself, the fragrance of the product. That's all your sensory claims. Again, they can all be substantiated with consumer research. Performance claims, so does the product perform as you want it to? Everything that I've kind of mentioned about, is it sweat proof? Does it smudge? They're all the product performance claims there. Ingredient claims, so again, as I mentioned earlier, you might say aloe vera or something in your product, and that, like I said, as long as you've got a substantial amount of the ingredient in there, that varies as well. But again, country to country, you can have a look at what the legislation is there about how much of an ingredient you need to include in your cosmetic to be able to say that ingredient claim. But yeah, so it can be really nice for products. I did my CBD webinar the other day, and that's often used as an ingredient claim because people love to sort of say they got CBD in their products. Combination claims, so this could be, for example, a shampoo and a conditioner. They work best together. You often see it on a shampoo. It says, you know, use it with this product for best results. That has to come from a combination claim, and it has to be substantiated. You can't say that unless you've got evidence that says when the products were used together, they had a better result with the consumer. So we can do that for consumer research. Comparison claims, I talked about those a little bit earlier. So it could be against a competitor, or it could be something like a new and improved formula. So you want to have that evidence there to say, when we tested our old formula and our new formula, when we compared them, there was a significant difference between the 2 products, and we can say the new formula is definitely a new and improved one. Subjective claims, these are the ones that you need to use consumer research for. So as I mentioned, I would buy this product, I would recommend this product, this is the gym bag must have. Those are your subjective claims. They can't be proven by science, they are just an opinion. And then objective claims, so it's the opposite way around. We can't substantiate it through consumer research because it has to be proven by science. There has to be an instrumental or a measurement in place that will say, you know, it is objectively, you can't argue it, it's a fact. So once you've chosen your claims, and you've got all your criteria there, And you've got your consumer research evidence and you're able to substantiate them all. Where do you see these claims? So consumer research can be used to substantiate claims on any platform at all. It doesn't matter. Any kind of advertising, which is, putting a product out into the public domain, no matter what it is, whether it's television, website, social media, packaging, radio, magazine, wherever. You can use that evidence to substantiate those claims there, and they all must be substantiated as well. So I wanted to give you some examples, and I've got some examples of active of active products as well to give you those examples. So Clinique have got a Clinique Fit range, and they've got some claims about the product, so things about being lightweight, sweat and humidity proof, 12-hour wear. This one won't budge. Again, that's a really consumer researchy claim. It's kind of use that terminology in your questionnaire, get people to agree with it. You can make those kinds of claims. Elemis have got their superfood range. So as I mentioned, it kind of fits into the wellness industry, active and wellness. So we've got some claims from them there, some really high claims. And Elizabeth Arden as well have their 8-hour cream. So again, we're looking at those long-term effects. Specifically with this one, it helps reverse dryness with a lightweight feel. So things about being lightweight are really good for active claims. Effects of extreme weather, again, that really comes into it as well. We've done a lot of studies for things like winter sports. So we've done like lip balms and moisturizers for people that are very into their winter sports, because it's not just the sports side of it, it's very much the climate and the effect of that extreme weather. These are all kind of really tie in when you're looking at active and sports claims. On social media, so I've picked a couple of those brands again. So on Elemis's Facebook page, they've got 91% agreed this frothy, soothing cleanser left their skin feeling gently cleansed, purified and refreshed. So they've used their claim substantiation and put it into their social media as well. And again, the Clinique Fit range, they've got their claims on there. Volumizes lashes, sweat and humidity resistant, wears for 24, smudge free hours, and they've got it I never can say this word, ophthalmologically tested. I'm sorry, I always mess that one up every time I try and say it. So just really good examples on social media of how you can use those claims to really push forward your product advertising. Claims on TV, so claims on television must be substantiated. You must have at least 70% of your panel agree with your claims to be able to even put it through Clearcast in the UK, but obviously other countries are slightly different. And you can see on the lower third, whatever claim you're talking about on your advert, you've got to stay in the lower third of the percentage and the amount of people it was tested on. So it's really important to do that when going on to TV. Talking about claims on labels and packaging, I think it's one that always gets forgotten about. I've had a lot of clients come to me in the past and say, well, we haven't put our adverts out there yet, it's just on our packaging, so we haven't done the substantiation yet. No, they have to be substantiated, even if it's on your claims and labels and packaging. Don't panic if it isn't. We can do the advert, we can test the product, we can get those claims substantiated. Obviously, if the test fails, if people disagree with it, you'd have to change your claims on your labels, but hopefully they will. Generally, if a product's been researched and developed to make those claims, you'll almost always get your claims that you need, as long as you've put the kind of formulation into it to achieve what you want it to achieve. So this comes from the ICAS website. Again, like I said, they publish news that all of their members kind of follow that code of conduct through. So it was never a thing. That's why I think there's a misconception. The advertising authorities never looked at the labels. It was kind of, it was trusted that they would have it substantiated, but it never really was looked at. It was more the adverts that were put into public otherwise. But now they're making a really clear point to say, actually, product labels do have a lot of claims on them, because if you're explaining what a product does, you're not going to just say it washes your hands. You're going to say all of the claims about the product that you need to be able to sell the product, because if people are just looking at two products on shelves, you want to have as many claims on there as you can possible, because if they're comparing two products, they're going to go with the one which has the best claims and the best description on it. So really important thing about your labels as well. So now I want to talk about a case study. Sorry, just a sip of water there. So this case study I want to look at is for foundation. So like I said, we've talked about where we've got our claims, what's our advertising authorities, what product category is our product. Now, how do we substantiate those claims? How do we use that consumer research? How do we design the study to make sure that those claims are going to be achieved and that I'm going to be able to use them in all my advertising? So this was a global cosmetics company testing a foundation. It was sorry. They wanted to test in their key Asian markets. So the product's going to be launched in Asia, and the reason for this being in particular is because they wanted to make sure the product was working in a humid climate. So we're looking at Asian territories which had a humid climate. So they wanted to assess the product performance during exercise, also in the climate, and make sure they could substantiate the claims the foundation was transfer resistant and sweat proof. So really important, again, not just to think about these active claims, but also the country in which you're looking to sell the product. As I mentioned, if you're looking at a UK climate, it's very, very different. So you're not really thinking about the humidity of the outside weather. You're just kind of going, does it work through exercise? So I thought this was a really good case study because it's kind of a double whammy. We have to really think about both of those issues about, the humidity in terms of the climate and also in terms of working out. So again, I'm going to bring it back to the advertising authorities because I can't push it enough. It's always really important to be aware of the code of conduct. So one of the countries in which this product was tested was Malaysia. So they've got the Advertising Standards Authority in Malaysia, and their code of conduct says that all descriptions, claims and comparisons which relate to matters of objectively ascertainable fact should be capable of substantiation. So if you're saying this product is sweat-proof, it needs to be substantiated. So any claim really, I think all claims say that they're of objectively ascertainable fact. So they must be capable of substantiation, and advertisers and advertising agencies are required to hold such substantiation ready for scrutiny without delay. A lot of code of conduct says this, and again, I always say, be really cautious because there are a lot of people out there that take the risk and put the products on the market and then go, okay, now I'll get the claim substantiated. It's such a risk because if you put your product out there and straight away someone complains to the advertising authority, you're already going to have to be in trouble because you haven't got that evidence ready. So it happens, people do it retrospectively, but try not to. Try and build it into your new product development to always get claim substantiation while you're developing your products. What was the study protocol for this study in particular? So I'll come back to the study again. So like I said, we're looking at humid countries. So we did Malaysia, Indonesia and Thailand. We did it at a time of year where it was high humidity in all of those territories. It was a single placement study, which basically means we were only investigating the one product. It wasn't a comparison. It was a 7-day study. That's all it needed to be because it's a foundation. There wasn't any long lasting effects we're looking for. We're literally looking to see what the product's performance was when it was being used for those 7 days. We've got female volunteers that are 18 to 25 years old. They need to be users of medium to full coverage foundation. So as you know, if you develop a foundation, anything like that, you've got different sort of levels of coverage. So you want to be able to recruit the people that are used to wearing that kind of coverage. I know for me, I'm very much a light coverage person. So I wouldn't necessarily want to test a full coverage foundation. I'm already going to have a bad opinion of it because I don't like the coverage it's providing. So that's really important to be aware of as well. So they had to attend the gym on one day of the trial. They had to attend a hot yoga class on one day of the trial. And they had to expose their face to water on one day of the trial. So that was through swimming, basically said to swim. So we're looking for people that are very, very active, and in particular these kinds of activities, because we really wanted to get these claims that it would kind of be all of these proofs. When they were able to put this into their advertising, they could advertise to people that went to hot yoga, that went to the gym, that went swimming, and say, it really worked in all of those different areas. So really targeting those active sporty people, kind of what they had a really good picture of who they wanted to advertise there. It needs to be national if marketing data is to be reliable. So not only are we looking at the different countries, we're also making sure we're inviting everyone from those countries, because we don't want to kind of pick and select the cities. We're not giving a very good reliable result there because it's available all through the countries. So what were the results? So this is taken from our report. So our reports do a breakdown of every single question, and they are available in real time. So we haven't got to kind of go into, get all the data and make a final report. All of our statistical analysis is built into our reports. So the minute one person answers the question, we can already see that analysis of what the breakdown is of the results, what percentage of people have agreed with the question. So as soon as we've got those minimum responses, our clients can just download the report straight from our website. So it means that it's really, really quick. Like I said, consumer research is all about time efficiency as well. We're not really kind of analysing the data to look at the science of it. It's simply in our report already, because people say if they agree or disagree with the question, and that's already downloadable. So this is our appendix 1. So this is a summary of the scores. So we're not too worried about what the different breakdown of each question was at this point. We just want to know, did the claim pass or didn't it? So on the left hand side, we've got our questions. We've then got the people, the number of people who said they were satisfied, the number of people who had a neutral answer, the number of people not satisfied, the percentage of people satisfied, the percentage of people neutral, and the percentage that were not satisfied. So when we're looking at claims, we are looking for the percentage of people satisfied. You'll see there's a little asterisk by all of those claims. This means that they passed the internal pass marks set by the client. So we can put our initial pass mark in, which is a 66% of people agree with the claim. That's because it's a statistical majority. But most people want to do a 70%. As I mentioned earlier, for some platforms, for example, TV, you need to have at least 70% of people agree with the claim before you're even considered to have your advert on there. So that's why we kind of set that internally. So you can decide that with our team, and that's all set. It just means that it makes it really easy for you, because you can go, okay, every single claim that has an asterisk, they can go into our marketing straight away. We can give our marketing team a login, so they can just log in, look at the report and go, okay, well, whatever's got an asterisk, that's going to go straight onto our packaging. So that's kind of how that all lays out. So our questions on the side here, I've just selected a few from this study to give you an idea of what they wanted to achieve and if they did achieve it. So did you agree that the foundation is resistant to humidity? 90% of people agreed. Did you agree that the foundation resists transfer as you wear or touch throughout the day? 91% of people agreed. Do you agree that this foundation is resistant to sweat? 88% of people agreed. And do you agree the foundation maintained acceptable appearance after attending the gym or hot yoga? 87% of people agree. Excellent results here. This would look amazing in their marketing. If you were a gym goer and you saw 87% said it maintained an acceptable appearance, you'd buy that foundation. You'd feel really confident in that. It's just absolutely brilliant results. So it's a really good case study for you, and gives you an idea of those kind of questions you can be looking at when you're developing your sports and active cosmetics. So examples of removed ads as well. So as I mentioned, the advertising authorities have had complaints about these adverts in one form or another, and they've had to withdraw the adverts, or in some cases, in the example I've got on there, they can even be sued if the adverts are misleading. So this is another reason I was saying about being really cautious of not putting the products out there. It's bad press. So these are all, as you can see, these are all news headlines. They've all been put out in the public, and it's not very good for your brand if you've had misleading claims put in the public. You lose a lot of that consumer trust of your customers. People will see that and maybe go, oh, I'm going to stop buying that product because they've been done for misleading advertising. So that's another reason to really consider it as well. So the examples I've put up, so there was Maybelline, was sued in the US for that. So it's having a 10-hour claim, but they hadn't actually got the evidence to substantiate that, or they didn't have substantial evidence to substantiate it. And this is where I say as well, be really cautious in the USA, because you can see it was a lawsuit. So the FDA helped a group of women build up a case and actually got sued. We see it a lot in the news about brands in the USA getting sued. You don't tend to see it over here, because over here, like I said, the advertising authorities just tend to get you to remove your advert. And also there's a lot more processes you have to go through, like I said, about having a responsible person. So those claims don't tend to get onto the market until they've been approved by a lot of people. So really important to be aware of those kinds of things in the USA. There was Clearasil, got in trouble for making medicinal claims because they talked about acne. So like I said earlier, be really cautious about your product category. Is it cosmetic? Is it medicine? Because if you make those medicinal claims, again, you have your adverts withdrawn. And I've also got an example there of a Pantene Pro V, who couldn't substantiate their claim up to 10 times stronger. So they didn't have enough evidence about that as well. So just really, like I said, just to give you a bit of cautious there, to make sure that you're not putting any adverts out there, because you don't really want to get that bad press about your products. So thank you for listening to all my case study and everything like that. I just wanted to say, I've talked about what to use about consumer research, what consumer research is, but why should you use 18 Global Research as your research provider? So we're an award-winning research agency. We've won International Business of the Year, we've won Family Business of the Year, we've won some apprenticeship awards. So we're really, really proud of our business, and we love entering into awards to kind of prove that for you guys. We're GDPR compliant. Of course, we have to be, because we are, we're based in the EU. But we do have our own internal data protection officer, because we really care about being GDPR compliant. And we've got an ISO 27001, so we have an audit on our compliance as well. This is really important, because we've got a lot of sensitive data from our participants. We've got about 600,000 participants across the globe. We have to be really cautious that we are handling their data well, and that your studies, the data are anonymized, their data is anonymized, on your studies. It makes sure that you can use your study reports as well, and they're GDPR compliant. It's also really important for the information you're giving us. As I said, you give us your order forms, they have all of your claims, they have all of your ingredients list on there, and you want to make sure that they're safe in our hands. We've got undesirable event reporting, which is part of the cosmetic vigilance, which has been built in compliance with the Cosmetic Vigilance Act. So that runs alongside every study. So a participant can answer about an undesirable event at any point of the study. You can download that data in real time, the same as you can in our reports. So this is great if your responsible person needs access to any undesirable events. They can access that in real time if anyone reports any events at any point throughout the study. We've got product liability insurance as well. Not every research provider does, but it's really important to make sure you're using one that does. It means if anything goes wrong on the study, we're both covered, us and you as well. I've never had a serious undesirable event the whole time I've been at 18 Global Research, but it's always good to know that if anything did go wrong, we're all protected. We've got an ISO 9001, which is to do with our quality assurance, our document control. We're a partner to the Market Research Society, so you'll know that all of our studies are ethical. They're built in code of conduct with the Market Research Society. We have constant training with them for things like study design, questionnaire design, so always staying up to date. We provide regulatory advice. As I mentioned, that's what I do. So if you need any regulatory advice at any point, you can always ask me. You get a designated study manager. As mentioned, that's how I started off in the company. They get to know everything about you and your company and what claims you want to make and how you work to make sure it's as easy a process as possible throughout study management, throughout your study. And they've got a great point of contact there at any point as well. Bit of further advice for consumer studies before I move on to the Q&A. So I always suggest the panel size starting at 100 responses. It's a really good, robust amount. It very much depends on your claim and it very much depends on your product. So it's just to give you guys a guideline, because I know that people often sort of go, well, where do we start? How many responses would you recommend? If you kind of think about 100 responses, it's a really good starting point. And we can go from there depending on what your products and claims are. You should inform your product liability insurance that you are using an external supplier for consumer studies, and you can let them know that we have product liability insurance. Your samples must have been safety tested to the point where they are safe for the consumer to use. So if you released your products on the market, whatever kind of safety testing you need to be able to do that, that's the same kind of safety testing that we need, because essentially that's what we're doing. We're putting our products into the hands of our consumers for them to use in their own homes. You need to make sure your samples are branded or in blank packaging if you're doing claim substantiation, because we want to make sure there's no bias towards your results. You need to make sure your questionnaire design supports your claims, and we can very much help with that as well. And just always feel free to seek professional advice from your research agency. That's what we're here for. If you're not sure about what kind of claims you can make, or what the advertising standards are, any of that kind of stuff, that is exactly what I'm here for. So I think now, yeah, we're on to a Q&A. So feel free to write through any questions that you may have at this point, and I'll be happy to answer them. Feel free as well, if you haven't got a question right now, like I said, I'll be emailing the recording straight after this. So you can just email me back on that as well, and you get my email address and everything through there. So feel free just to email me directly if you've kind of think of some questions after now. It's quite a lot of pressure at the moment, kind of answer these questions straight away. And I know there's been a lot of information in the webinar as well, so feel free to take time to digest it and then have a think about what questions you might have. But I'll leave this open for a little minute longer before moving on. I can't see any questions coming in. I don't want to hold everyone up too much. But like I said, feel free to email any questions you may have. So yeah, just to say that I want to put your attention to the SCS, so the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. They've got a distance learning course on the essentials of cosmetic science. So it's an industry recognised course. And you can do that any place in the world, so no matter where you're based, you can do the distance learning course there. So if you're looking to enter the field of cosmetics, or if you want to learn some more about cosmetic science, if you haven't kind of got any course in the essentials there, have a look at their website. They're also holding the IFSCC Congress on the 19th to the 22nd of September 2022, and you can register your interest at that web address there now as well. So thank you very much for listening today. As I said, I know there's always a lot of information in my webinars. I get so excited about a topic and I want to tell you everything. So if you just feel free to email me if you've got any questions, or if you've got any projects or products that you're developing to do with active and sports claims at the moment, you can feel free to give me a little email. And if there's any feedback you have that you'd like to share, I'd love to hear it as well. Thank you very much for listening. I'll be sharing the recording soon. Have a great weekend. Bye.